Our story starts in the city of Beverly, about 25 miles north of Boston. This is the Cummings Center, today an office park, but its history goes back a long way.
It's the oldest continuously occupied commercial industrial site in the country, as far as we know. It was originally authorized in 1643 for the Friends Mill. It was a grist mill that was a tidal grist mill that operated here with the approval of the Salem town government, and it was used continuously from 1643 until the mid-1890s. United Shoe Machinery started its construction in 1903, and the first occupancy of the building was in 1906. They occupied it as United Shoe until about almost 1980. At that time, things really started to fall apart after their adverse Supreme Court decision on monopolies. It fell into a terrible state. All of these windows, not a window that you can see, that we can see looking down this building, that was not broken or cracked, and perhaps temporarily patched up with pieces of plastic and clear caulking compound. But the building was in terrible shape. There are places in this building there were more dead pigeons in there than there were people working in here.
We actually were involved in purchasing this property in two stages. We had sort of taken a run at the property back in late 1994, early 1995, and we're negotiating directly with Black & Decker at that point in time. And I think it was clear from the offering materials that the property was contaminated, and that was an issue that was going to have to be addressed in selling it to any purchaser.
United Shoe didn't sell the machines, they leased them, and to prevent their being reused in any way, if the lease, no matter how old a machine was, if they were going to scrap it, they would scrap it in Beverly. They would ship them back from all over the world right back to Beverly.
They had the deck of an old battleship, this big hunk of steel on the ground, and they had a crane, and the machines, which had been leased, would come back, and they would drop them onto the steel plate to break them up, to, I guess, break up the steel again for reuse. So, oil would leak out of the machines when they break them.
I know the most contaminated part of the property was next to what's called the chip grind shed, where the ground was just, I think, saturated with oils containing PCBs. And it was just turning up everywhere. I mean, there were lots and lots of underground pipes and steam tunnels and that type of thing. And I mean, you kept hearing stories practically every other day about oil that was appearing in places that nobody expected and didn't really know where it came from. So it was an interesting process.
There was anecdotal information which came from the property manager from a union store that back in the 60s, there was 10,000 gallons of oil put into an electric manhole instead of into the oil tanks. And there was oil contamination around that area. And so during the construction remediation, when that building was demolished and the old electric ducts were taken out and broken open, oil came out. So it was true. It was true.
There were, as I say, thousands of gallons of oil and thousands of tons of soil in that area that were removed. Most of it was batch processed right here in a cold asphalt process and used in the paving.
So we had come up with cleanup standards and the deed restriction, and a lot of the negotiations, there were two major pieces that were sold. Were in how clean would they accept, and what was going to be the language. How were you going to restrict the property? And in the larger parcel that Cummings purchased, the deed restriction and the cleanup standards were part of the purchase and sale documents. And the owner made a commitment to clean up the site to reach this permanent solution. And what happened was that Cummings bought the property for essentially nothing, $500,000. He put $1 million into an escrow account, Cummings, to fund the cleanup, and then the seller agreed to pay for costs above that. So that capped Cummings' liability. He knew his liability was $1 million, and that was it.
Well, I think the fact that the state of Massachusetts, or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, had instituted a program whereby we obtained a covenant not to sue from the state with respect to the environmental conditions was key in our agreeing to go in and buy the property. As long as we made sure through our agreement with Black & Decker that the property was clean and that certain achievable results were obtained, the state would not sue us for any new conditions that were subsequently found. That gave us comfort in going forward and buying the property. It just reduced the risk tremendously.
Other than our own activity, we've got a brand new elementary school. The land was donated for the McEwen Elementary School. The James L. McEwen Elementary School has about 325 children, and that's in the extreme northwest corner of the property. And on the southeast corner of the property will be the new Beverly Municipal Public Safety Facility, police and fire, or fire, we're not quite sure which it's going to be yet.
And all this built on land that at one point people were essentially abandoning.
Oh, very much so. There was no interest, little appetite for this property from anybody at the time. So we've seen a lot of changes take place here, certainly.